Before I finished these technicalities, I would like to say thanks to organizers, especially to Peter, who invited me. And okay. At the very beginning, what I have to admit is that I have been raised up, in philosophy, in continental philosophy. In continental philosophy, and then after I have been trained in analytic philosophy. So I've been somewhere in between, but much more inclined to analytic philosophy than now to the continental philosophy. The question which I would like to answer in this today's speak is the following. Should we philosophers, qua philosophers, really be active outside the philosophy? And what does it mean to be active outside the philosophy? Or we as philosophers should be active just in philosophy? And philosophy is something which is theoretical, which is just conceptual, more or less analysis. And therefore there are two quotes. One is from Sorensen's book on thought experiments. Why I would like to start with thought experiments? Because I will use quite well-known example of thought experiments. It is Plato's Republic. And then the second quote is, when I was a student of philosophy, I would say that it's really something my life motto. But after a few years, I realized that it is something that is just a part of a specific ideology. So the idea how to change the world as a philosopher is beyond the scope of philosophy. That's my personal attitude. But nevertheless, it doesn't mean that I, as a critical intellectual, could not be engaged in political movement or something else. But philosophers, qua philosophers, should just think about, not. Okay, from the very beginning, wisdom. Nothing special, nothing new. But the idea of wisdom is always something that is connecting with the idea which was represented in Plato's Republic, that there could be the case that the city is wise. So we are speaking about, usually we are speaking about the wisdom when we have individuals, and individuals are either wise or are not wise. But when we are speaking about the group or societies, or in Plato's case about city, then we are sometimes, or some of us are sometimes suspicious about the possibility that there is something like a so-called collective wisdom, or the wisdom of the group, wisdom of the society. So, what is the starting point? I'm saying I am a conservative philosopher. So I will start a little bit with the really not a big scholars. I'm not a big scholar of Plato, but there are some points which are obvious and well known around. And I will just say a little bit about it. So why we are in the city? Because we are not self-sufficient. Either you would like to hear this from Plato, you can then move almost 2,000 and something more years forward, and you have Rousseau, he is saying, or in Hobbes also there is, but nevertheless the basic idea is almost the same. So we are not so sufficient, we need a lot of things, so how can we achieve this? We can achieve this if we are working or if we are doing it together. That's the idea. But we have heard from at least two guys who were speakers before me about the idea that if there is a city and the city is not just a geographical concept, it is something more. And we are connect, in this case, the idea of city with the idea of consciousness, or better to say, with the idea of awareness. And it means something, because I just put two questions. Equilibrium. What I mean when I'm saying equilibrium? I mean something that there are very simplified case. There is a city with 10 inhabitants. All of them have different, or all of them, each of them has its own, or her or his own ideas, his or her own history. Perhaps they have the same cultural background. But nevertheless, the equilibrium means that there is something new, which is not just a sum, or mereological, if you would prefer, mereological sum of 10 consciousness or 10 awareness. It is something additional. Is it emergent? Could be. It is supervenient? Could be. But it is something. The question is, what comes first? We would say usually that first there are individuals, and then there is a group or society or city or whatever, and the first is their personal consciousness or personal awareness, and then comes what we are describing as a collective awareness. But, you know, in some cases, it is not really the question what is in the time before and what is then after. Because sometimes, if we are looking at the city as Plato or Socrates would do, then we can say that in some cases, the city as a new entity, a new social entity, is consciousness and is doing something. And this, it means that the city has its own task. It has its own goal. And the goals or the tasks of the individuals or the inhabitants of the city, or the citizens of the city, are not as important as it looks when we start from the idea, which is some kind of evolutionary idea, that there is a simple individual, there are 2 of them, 3 of them, and then there is a city. Now, there is something which is connected with the question. Because in Plato's case, the city, the organization of the city would be based on the 4 basic virtues. The question is, are these virtues on the same level? Are there some connections between them? I mean, when I'm speaking the connection, if some virtue necessitates another virtue, or it is somehow one virtue dependent on another virtue? It is basically, the question which will I tackle is the question of the society is good, the society is just, the society is wise. The question is, what does it mean when we are speaking about freedom? Because freedom is something which is perhaps not as much important in the Plato's time as it is now in modern time. And it looks that when we are speaking about a society which should be just, that the just society could be achieved just when we have a certain class of citizens which are wise enough to perform a proper organization, to rule the system in the proper way. What does it mean? It means that for Plato, the society has a nice division of jobs. And the question is, are we biologically predestinated to be workers, to be soldiers, to be rulers, or if you would like, philosophers? Or is it much more dependent on the education? Because Plato would say, yes, it is a predestination of somebody that he is capable to being educated, to being raised as philosopher at the end, as the ruler. So the most important part is that Plato's idea is that in the society there has to be division of jobs. This division is somehow predestinated, but it is also achieved by proper education. And at the same time, he said, or Locutus says, perhaps Socrates or who else said it, that the members in each class are not, or the membership of each class is not the same. So we have a huge class of so-called workers, we have a smaller class of soldiers or wards, and we have the smallest class of rulers or philosophers. And the question of the freedom is the following. We know who should rule the society. Plato's answer is, perhaps there is a democracy. And he has a negative way for approaching democracy. So he said, if there are people who killed other peoples, who stole something from others, then there are some who can do whatever they would like to do not take care about others, and so on. It is the proper description of democratic constitution or the democratic society. So the question was for him, would you like to live in such a society? On the other side, it is a much more, I would say, philosophically interesting question. On the other side, we have a society which is well organized, which serves its purpose. But nevertheless, such a society is not a free society. Oh, sorry. Why? The point is that there is a small class, or the class of the decision makers, opinion makers, is such a small class. And all others are just doing what they are saying it is the best way to proceed, to solve something, to organize something. Perhaps there could be a case where we have a combination of Huxley's Brave New World on one side and Zamyatin's We on the other side. When we are speaking that, you know, everything is well organized, extremely well. We all are happy with this. But we don't know how and why it is so organized. We are just living in such a society. And then somebody is coming by pure chance or by mistake, and in both cases it is first he, okay, in Zamyatin could be first she, it is in between who is really the first, and asking a nasty question or start to thinking a way around. And what does it mean? The question is, when we are trying to produce the best society or the best organized society, we would accept the idea if we are getting something new, a new knowledge, a new answer to the previous question, new statement, which was previous not known or falsely answered. Would we say that this procedure would increase the wisdom of the society or not? We usually, on the first side, we would say yes, because if we have something like 10 parts of the knowledge, whatever it is, and then we are adding 11th part, and we would say, yes, our knowledge is better, and if we are wise, then we will make a certain kind of judgment. Perhaps what is important in society case, it is the value judgment. So we will judge better, so the society will be better organized, and at the end, the result will be somehow problematical. Why? Because if the society is better organized, if the society is wiser, then there will be much more obstacles or much more requirements for each member of the society how to work. So the space of freedom is just closer and closer to, the question is to what? Perhaps to the Brave New World, or to the, as I said, Zamyatin's We, or we do not care about it. And the problem, which is behind, there are a lot of slides, but I do not have time to say it, to show you it. The problem which is behind is the following. Should we improve the wisdom of the society? Perhaps in the case when we have a problem, and earlier solution of the problem is not the best one. But the best solution is some kind of limitation of freedom space. So the best of all solutions means that the space of the freedom is the smallest one. So wiser society, less freedom in society. Would you like to have such a society? Thank you.